If I were to start over off grid with almost nothing, there's absolutely a few things that I would change, and they have nothing to do with money. In 2020, I was laid off and I had very little money. I had next to no experience starting an off grid homestead, and there's a few things I could have done differently. Here's what I might have overbuilt too early. I'm not saying that it was an ultimately bad decision, but if we're just standing here today, looking back 6 years ago, what could I strategically have done a little bit better? And expanding my livestock, all the fencing and round pen and stables and all of those things that were required to upkeep all of these animals and feed them, I didn't have to necessarily dive into those quite as early as I did. They're not a problem at all right this moment. There's constant chores and work to be done, but I like that. I'm only saying that I could have worked a little, I could have focused a little more on the actual foundation, and building a business up and creating sources of income was really important. And I think it worked out swimmingly well, but maybe that just tweaking that a little bit could have maybe made this run a little smoother at the beginning. What I waited too long on. I was unsure about the process to building the cabin, and I wanted to be sure to do things correctly. And I did a lot of research, and I barely started this cabin a year ago. So 5 years in, and that was probably it was a pretty good idea. It worked out well. I had my camper van to start with. That helped me a lot to have that shelter, and the shop was one of the first structures I built. I can't think that anything was really wrong with that. However, maybe I listened to people just a little more than I should have. I noticed that a lot of people over catastrophize things and make it sound impossible to work with the county to get all the paperwork done to build a cabin if that's something you want to do. And I could have started a little sooner working with them to get it all done. Mostly I was waiting to build up, you know, enough money to do it. And so really again, I'm not telling you that the way I went about it to start with was horrible. I'm just looking back and trying to finally tune a few of these things. It might help some of you guys out. What did I misunderstand about my land? The number one thing I can think of about the actual location and my property, I didn't realize it was as windy as it is. The wind is the number one most ruthless thing about the property. So preparing for that is pretty important. Another thing I could think of is not knowing gardening and all that. I over expanded my gardening at one point and wound up, having to haul more water to try to offset the rainwater storage I had, and that was more work than necessary. And so, I would suggest maybe 400 to 600 square feet if you're in a similar climate. Just really refine a 400 600 square foot garden greenhouse. If you can put it underground like my geothermal, that's really nice. The above ground works fine. You can grow in it year round, just not as well. And so really focus on building that soil up with livestock manure. That's one of the huge benefits to the livestock. Unless you're just going to haul in wood chips and stuff and do it that way, you can do that too. I just wanted to have the experience of building it all from scratch. Have you ever heard me say shelter, water, food? These are the absolute most fundamental important things that you need to put in place. This infrastructure is pinnacle to anybody's success in any kind of a survival situation. And starting off grid in the middle of nowhere is a survival situation. You really could get into a bind if you broke down and couldn't get out or didn't have money or food or water or shelter. And so, starting with having the camper van, that was ideal for me. Building the shop to store tools and food and whatnot. then slowly starting to garden and whatnot in in tandem with having food storage. Um, and then, of course, I started building rain harvesting immediately. I had the ability to haul water and to store water the first week. So you got to get those things going right out the gate. And if you have shelter, water, and food, everything else can kind of find its way. Eventually, you can add power. You can start working on building your sources of income and all those different kind of things. What would I ignore entirely next time? It's hard to say, really. I think, my initial plan, and I think everyone's, is to pretty well save a lot of money and then get started. And I was forced to come out here with very little money. And I've proven that it's not necessary to have a huge amount of money. You do want to create more sources of income and get things going and create wealth through creating your own food, water, shelter. Once you're growing your own food and things, you really offset a lot of costs. But it's it's not necessary to have hundreds of thousands of dollars saved up or whatnot. And in fact, you can get by with a lot less. And I came out here with $6,000. I worked hard to save up that money. I had $0 the day I started saving. You can start saving today and come up with $6,000. But it's not a huge amount of money. And I think that's a huge, if you look around at all the off grid channels and whatnot, most of them, uh, you know, they're pretty flashy and nice places. And that's why, gosh, almost everyone, I get comments constantly about people think I'm rich. Some people think I'm poor. Some people think I'm rich. But people say, gosh, you had to have a ton of money to do that, and they think that there's all these hidden secrets about the money side of things. And I'm just here to tell you, for the people, I'm not trying to convince anybody. But if you're already on the fence and this is something you're interested in, it is possible to do it without an enormous amount of money. If you're just starting out, you don't have to do everything right. You just need to avoid doing the wrong things in the wrong order.